I'd like you to imagine your dream life. See the version of you who has what you want to have, feels how you want to feel, and is who you want to be. I'm Brittany Hoops, your hypnotherapist and manifestation coach, and this is the show where I'll teach you to master the full power of your mind, to guide you on your journey towards destination manifestation.
Take a step back for the ones who can't do that. Hope I separate from my past.
All right. You are listening to the Destination Manifestation Podcast, helping you to align your conscious and subconscious mind to manifest a life of your dreams. Welcome back. If you're already subscribed to the show, thank you so much. I'm hoping you are enjoying this series that we've been doing so far. I know I've enjoyed creating it. This is part 3 of 3, the final part of our Building Trust series. So if you haven't listened to part 1 or 2, just know that they are out now. They're the 2 episodes before this one. I highly recommend them. But in part 3, we're going to tackle a different and kind of very particular certain aspect of trust. Okay? One that comes up all the time. How to learn how you can trust yourself again. Have you been missing trust in yourself? It would make life a whole lot easier, wouldn't it? What it means to trust yourself. Your inner knowing, your ideas, your inspiration, rather than just stepping lockstep and stepping in line with everyone else around you, copying what you think is successful, and comparing yourself to others when you don't feel like you measure up. Ugh, not fun. Because when you know how to trust yourself again, that's when your intuition, remember we talked about intuition quite a bit in part 2. Your intuition is open and able to communicate with you again. Divine inspired actions, they become available to you again. Trusting yourself opens this whole new portal of communication to and within you. But you have to trust first. Trusting is taking the step and then trusting that the stair will be created underneath you before your foot falls. It can be scary. It's not always easy or fun. It's believing in the unseen. The not yet conscious, like we talked about in part 2, right? But when you do, let me tell you, it is pure freaking magic. It's pure inspiration. It's downloads. It's divine guidance. So let's learn how to do it, shall we? So let me tell you a story. I was working with this client through one-on-one hypnotherapy and coaching a few years ago, and she was a very successful singer. There's a chance you may have heard of her, but of course I keep all my clients anonymous. But she was kind of having a down year. Now this was right after lockdown from COVID. It was kind of throwing off her game because she actually did super well during COVID. Her business, because even being an artist, she's still an entrepreneur, right? It's still a business, even if she does art. It had thrived during COVID. And so this kind of felt weird to her because she was like, okay, during the hard times, I did fantastic. But now that things were going back to normal, it just didn't feel like things were lining up how she was expecting them to have lined up. And so I asked her, what do you think was the difference between you during COVID and you afterwards? And of course, the difference wasn't immediately clear to her. It wasn't something that she had conscious awareness of, which is why we brought that same question into hypnotherapy. And what we discovered was that the primary difference between her art and business during COVID and her art and business afterwards was her trust in herself. Her trust in herself had diminished. Trust in her own ideas, what she felt was good and right for her. Because during COVID, she had to trust herself. Like there was no other choice. There was no blueprint on how to navigate life as a singer who usually does in-person concerts and all these things, right? She didn't know how to navigate that. No one did. No one in the music industry or really any industry, right, knew the right answer on how to handle COVID. We were all making it up as we went. And so she had to look within herself for answers on what to do next. And that was also a really creative time period for her, right? Song ideas just sort of came and she listened to them and she's very in tune with her intuition and her creativity and her inspiration during this time because she had time to settle down and listen. But after COVID, then it was like normal life kicked back in, right? She reverted back to these old habits of looking towards others, those in her industry, those who were like one step ahead of her, right? And seeing what they did to be successful and then trying to create a version of that at the expense of listening to her intuition, which as an artist, not listening to your intuition can have detrimental effects. It was almost like her intuition got her to the certain level of success. And then once she was there, she was like, see ya. And she abandoned it in favor of this new shiny thing that someone else was doing or what she thought she had to do to be even more successful. And then she wondered why it wasn't working. It's because she had stopped doing what she had done to become successful to begin with. So let me ask you, this kind of seems a little off topic, but I swear I'll come back together. Have you guys seen the newest Hunger Games movie? Or really, I mean, if you've seen any of the movies or read any of the books in the franchise, I saw the newest one a couple weeks ago, and it kind of reminded me, as I was watching it, it reminded me of this old client, of her story. And so sometimes when we're wanting to manifest something that means a lot to us, or like this client, she wanted to manifest increased revenue, the success of her next album, these kind of things. We want to go with something that's tried and true, right? We want to minimize our perceived risk. That feels like the better option to us logically. And so when we see other successful people in our field or someone who has what we want, and sometimes, depending on what field you're in, if you're anything like me in the online business space, right? There's also a lot of people that tout like, look at how successful I am. Do what I do and you can be successful like me, right? They try to sell the dream. They try to sell their blueprint to success. I'm sure you've seen influencers in your industry too try to teach their route to success. And so it's natural for us to be like, yes, I want that. Yes, I want the answer. So we flock to those resources, trying to get a piece of their success. And what reminds me of the Hunger Games is it's kind of like, you know how they all start in a circle around the arena, right? The tributes. And then the buzzer goes off and they all charge for the weapons in the center. It's kind of like us when we don't trust ourselves. We're all rushing to these other people who have success. It's like success is the weapon in the center. And we're just wanting to snatch a piece of their way, of their success, while our own success, our own path, everything is already laid out for us. Our own way, it remains completely untouched. It's just sitting there, ready for us to just trust enough to claim it. But the truth is, we can only ever access our own success. We can't grab someone else's. So what we end up doing is just wasting our time chasing someone else's success while ours just sits there, collecting dust, wondering when we will ever finally trust ourselves enough to stumble upon it. Now, here's what I'm not saying, okay? I'm not saying not to follow the advice of successful people or others in your industry or coaches. No. That could be very helpful, but any advice you take from someone, and that includes myself and the advice I give you here right now, okay? It should always be through the lens of these two things. A, am I learning valuable new skills, things I can take with me and apply elsewhere? And B, does this resonate with my own path? Is this something that overlaps with my way? And how do you know if it does? Well, it's going to feel good. It's going to feel right to you. You get that sort of like, hell yes kind of feeling. It's funny. It kind of reminds me, a few weeks ago, I decided to dust off this old book that I have. If you're in the online space, you probably have heard of it. It's called The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. Okay. It was written like a decade ago, and I read it about a decade ago because I've been very interested in online business for a long time. And I decided to reread it again. And this book was kind of one of the first mainstream books, at least to my knowledge, that introduced the idea of passive income and a remote working lifestyle and making that really attainable, which is kind of funny because now the idea is super commonplace, right? After COVID, so many people work remotely, but that was kind of like a very novel thing 10 years ago. And I read this book again recently because, guys, I am cooking up some major, amazing new things for you this year. Ways to help you manifest your goals beyond, in addition to just working one-on-one through hypnotherapy and coaching. And I realize in myself that I personally sometimes fall too heavy on the other side of this trust spectrum, where I'm so hyper aware of my own path and like wanting to create my own path that I start to kind of reject the conventional wisdom of business and sales advice that has been tried and tested and true. And I just have this desire to kind of want to completely reinvent the wheel of all business. And, not to say that I couldn't do that, but like, do I have to? And is that really my path, or is that me just wanting to be like different? You know what I mean? Can anyone else relate to this? And by doing that, I'm leaving all these very valuable tools on the table, right? Things that actually work and things that can help me reach more people. And, I don't need to disregard all prior wisdom. You know what I mean? That's not smart either. So when I read this book, I had to be careful though, because I was like, okay, I'm going to read the book. But I told myself, Brittany, you can read this book, but gut check yourself when he's talking about something that you know is outdated. So that means just don't blindly follow whatever he says. Like, trust yourself to know the difference. And B, gut check yourself when he's suggesting something that just doesn't resonate with you. Especially somebody like Tim Ferriss, has kind of gotten the reputation, and I don't know if this is fair or not, of being just like kind of like the Silicon Valley bro version of online business. That doesn't necessarily mean that like me as a millennial woman might resonate with all his ideas. It might just not be the life I want to create. Doesn't mean I can't learn something from his book. Doesn't mean I have to do everything he did, because that's not going to be my path. The idea is to keep what works and ditch the rest. Keep what works and ditch the rest. I mean, this is a valuable thing for all aspects of life. As some of y'all know, I think I've mentioned before that I didn't go to business school back in the day. My college degree is in theater. It's in acting and psychology, which actually did prove to be very helpful. Both degrees actually proved to be very, very helpful. Who would have thought? But NYU's Tisch School of the Arts has this robust theater program. And what makes it unique is that they've split this program into kind of like many different acting studios. And so each studio teaches their own different acting technique. It's kind of like the Harry Potter houses. Like you could be, and what's funny is like you're even assigned, your first studio, you're assigned to. You don't even get to pick. So it's like, am I a Gryffindor actor? Am I a Slytherin actor? Like it decides, right? And so you have to stay in your original studio that you're assigned to for 2 years. And it kind of becomes somewhat of your identity. It's kind of how you get to know people based on what studio they were in. So I trained with the Lee Strasberg studio, and we were known for kind of being the future TV and movie stars, like the people who were going to be on screen. That was the kind of acting, as opposed to the Stella Adler studio, which was like for the serious theater actors. And Cap 21 was for like the bubbly musical theater Broadway people. And ETW, like they were just kind of weird. They just did experimental like theater art stuff, But after those original 2 years where you kind of learned your foundation, you learn that technique, then you could either stay there and learn some more for your rest of your 2 years. You could go to a different studio. You could try them all. You could do whatever you wanted, right? The idea was to learn what you wanted to learn, keep what resonates with you and the type of actor that you want to be and what works for you and makes sense for you, and then ditch the rest. Use it to create your own style. Or the analogy that I always like to use, which is what food are you going to put from the buffet on your plate to eat? Decide what food you want and then leave the rest. You don't have to eat all of it just because it's all there. And you don't even have to eat the same food as the successful person in your industry just because she ate it and then she was successful. Your taste buds are different than hers. You could be missing out on your favorite meal ever because you're so focused on doing what this other person is doing. Has this come up for you? I feel like this happened to me recently. Like, have you ever gone to a restaurant that you go to like all the time, right? And you have your kind of go-to meal. You don't even have to open up that menu. You know what you're going to order. And then one day they're out of it. The waiter tells you, yeah, sorry, we ran out of that. And you're like, oh no, what am I going to eat? And so you have to order something different. And then you discover that you like that different thing even better. Like you would have never known. You were so set in one way. So that's what it means to trust yourself, to slow down, to look internally, to tune into your own intuition and just see what answers are there. And that's why I love hypnotherapy. It's a tool that can help you tune into your own intuition. I have some clients that's how they do their sessions. They don't come for me for any change, really. They have questions, problems, big decisions that they need to make, and their conscious mind is all tied up in a knot about it, making it really hard to know what to do. And so they use our sessions so that I can help guide them into the connection with their own intuition, with their own inner guide. And that's what's great. It's not me giving them answers. I don't have their answers, but I can help them connect to the part of them that knows their answers for themselves and knows their path. And depending on how deep someone goes in hypnotherapy, and what their experience of hypnotherapy is, everyone is so different. They may or may not remember what their intuition suggested that they do next. And so I always make sure to type up notes for them if they want it that can sort of outline that plan. Luckily, I'm there to be able to be like, here's what came forth. Here's where to go next, so that they can become conscious of it and they can see it written down very clearly. Through hypnotherapy, we make subconscious knowing become conscious awareness. And that's exactly what that client that I mentioned before, that's exactly what she did. We tuned into her intuition. We got the answers that could lead to her path, her abundance, her artistic success. And it ends up that some of those ideas that came forth were ideas and inspiration that she had like a full year earlier. Yeah. But she had never taken action on because she was nervous that it was too weird for her genre or it was too different than what she had done before. And she just decided after working together that she just kind of set those fears aside and she'd do it anyways. And wouldn't you know, her next album was the most successful album that she had had to date. Even more successful than that year during COVID when she had done relatively well. It's learning to trust yourself and to have faith in the fact that the moment you have a desire, the universe has it mapped out for you. It's done. It's there. Now you just have to find your route to get to it, to line up with it. If you follow other people blindly, you'll end up at the end of their route. And you were very successful at their route, only there's no gold at the end of that rainbow for you. It's theirs. There's nothing for you there. So find your route and then reap the reward. So I just want to thank you, travelers, for joining us here today on this journey towards destination manifestation. You are amazing. And if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to this podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, and honestly, if you've enjoyed this entire series here, and if you felt like you've learned something interesting about how to trust yourself and your manifestations, you can learn more by following the podcast. That's the best way. Literally every Tuesday, we're dropping some wisdom on how you can manifest your dream life. And it's kind of like your little weekly check-in with your intuition, with your manifestations to make sure that you're on your journey, your path towards destination manifestation. So be sure to click that follow button now. Also, I have one more beautiful shout out and review to share with you. Of course, there's so many more on Apple Podcasts that you guys have left, and even some beautiful ones on YouTube comments for each episode. So if you've left a review or a comment and I didn't get a chance to give you a shout out, just know that I love you and I see you and I appreciate you. But today's featured review is from IDKLMAO 77. I love that username. I don't know, laugh my ass off, right? See, I'm cool. And they say, So inspiring. Brittany really has a way to connect with her audience. I was completely engrossed in the first 3 episodes of her podcast, and she kept me completely engaged the whole time. I believe Brittany is an exceptional speaker, but most of all, she's so good at truly speaking to your soul and offering her sage advice and wisdom through, presumably, years upon years of experience. I will add, it has been now about 16 years of studying manifestation, so it's been a little bit of time. They say this is the kind of podcast you can listen to multiple times and still take something new away from it. It helps to know a little bit about her backstory as a reality television star, however, not totally necessary. I've already recommended her podcast to multiple friends because I believe the skills she teaches are necessary for everybody to learn. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, for sharing the show, and really taking these teachings to heart. Because that's what they're designed to do. That's why we do it. I appreciate you, and I appreciate everyone who's left a review so much. All music for this podcast is by A Cubed. And remember, follow your path. That's where your success is. I'll catch you next time.